This is Audiommunity, a podcast about our body's never-ending fight with the outside world. Hi everyone, this is Audiommunity, recorded on November 15th, 2017.
Finally!
I am Kevin Bonham, and it's been some time. I think the last episode we posted was like June of 2016.
That's a long time ago.
It is a long time ago. And on that episode, I went back and listened to it, and I said, Kate is going to be defending her PhD anytime now.
Oh, no.
No.
Kate is not joining us because she has yet to defend. I
But
hear
she
it's
is
happening
defending.
next month.
Yeah.
Oh, good for her.
Oh, that's super soon.
Yeah. But you may be hearing some unfamiliar voices. But first, we'll say, joining me as always, Matt Woodruff.
Hello.
Matt.
How's it going?
It's been hard to get here. I'm a half an hour late, which is, I guess, not terribly unusual. But I think at some point we should actually reintroduce ourselves because people have probably forgotten who the hell we are. But the other people joining us tonight, we have Chadene Tremaglio. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
That's right. Yeah, it's a tough one.
All right. Welcome, Chadene.
Hi.
And Camilla, I'm going to screw up your last name also.
It's
Camilla Engblom. Engblom. Hello.
Hi.
So I think this episode, we're not going to talk that much about some specific science. I think we should talk about the science that you guys do and sort of introduce yourselves. But it's probably going to be a short episode just saying, hello, we're here again, and reminding ourselves how we do this damn thing. So first up, maybe, Matt, do you want to just like remind people who you are and what you do?
Well,
Has anything changed since the last time that we recorded?
What's that?
Has anything changed since the last time we recorded? Any big life events?
Not really anything that I can think of.
Okay.
Yeah, no, what Kevin is referring to is we had a baby. Emily and I had a baby about...
Congratulations.
Yeah, about 4 months ago now.
Wow.
So if at any point I'm totally incoherent, it's because I haven't really slept all that much. And it's not at all because, I'm totally incoherent. So, yeah. So in addition to that, if anybody was listening really carefully, I was working in Bali Palendran's lab. I was doing some vaccine science stuff there, and he has since moved to Stanford. And I decided, as we have a 4-month-old baby now, not to go to Palo Alto across the country. And so I am now working in a different lab as well. So, yeah, it's been really stable since June.
Big moves.
Very cool. Well, sort of cool. The baby is super cute. I got to go down and visit, and he is pretty adorable.
Yeah, he's the best baby.
I feel like he needs to come on the podcast and talk science to us.
At some point, maybe.
I think.
And Matt is definitely not biased in any way.
Yeah, no, not at all. Not at all.
About his qualities.
Also, I think it's important to break here and ask what everybody's drinking because...
yes.
Yeah, we missed that already. See, we haven't quite fallen into form.
That's
I know.
right. I'm drinking Krabby's, the original alcoholic ginger beer, which was in my fridge
Interesting.
for some reason.
That sounds tasty.
It is.
Did you do any investigation to identify whether it is actually the original alcoholic ginger beer?
I'm going to guess
I feel like
it's probably not.
I feel like that might have been like 4,000 years ago.
Maybe.
Humans thought ginger tastes good. Fermented sugar tastes good. Let's combine the two.
Kevin's a fermentation snob.
Yes,
He's
I know this.
really snobby about fermentation.
Maybe it's the original Krabby's alcoholic ginger beer, but not overall.
Yes, the original ginger beer named Krabby's.
Yeah.
Is it good?
It's pretty tasty. I haven't gotten so far yet, but it's good.
And Matt, what are you drinking?
A Miller Lite.
Nice choice.
Yeah, I decided that I think we need to shift gears a little bit from the last time we recorded and get some actual content on a regular basis. So I figured I would move away from craft and, go towards Miller Lite, or that was what was in my fridge.
I don't have any idea how those things are related to one another.
Yeah, just, superstition, and that's pretty much it. Also,
I
it's
seem
what was
to
in
recall.
my fridge. Yeah,
that's fair. I seem to recall the last 5 or 6 times we recorded, I was the only one drinking, and it made me feel like an alcoholic.
So now,
I mean,
unfortunately,
just because we're drinking now doesn't mean you're not an alcoholic, Kevin.
That's true. I was not trying to draw the reverse correlation. But sadly, this evening, I am not drinking anything because though I was planning to pick up some beer on my way home, it turned out I left work like 20 minutes late. And so didn't even get here on time without a stop. And so sadly, I am drinkless at the moment.
I too am drinkless. I'm with you on that. I've got water because my husband drank my beer. So
what a bastard.
That's a terrible story.
Well, he's on dad duty right now with the 2 monsters. So he kind of deserved it. But, you know, it was a UFO white. It's my favorite. I was looking forward to it. What are you going to do?
UFO is a good beer. I think UFO was the first beer that I drank that I actually liked the taste of.
Oh, yeah. It's delicious.
It might have been on my Harvard interview, actually, grad school interview.
Oh, wow.
Wow. Maybe that's what did it.
I was lame and didn't go on that beer tour because I thought it would reflect poorly on me to go to the brewery, and I was an idiot.
Yeah, you had some weird ideas back then. Not that you don't have weird ideas now, but
Yeah, plenty of those.
Yeah, Matt was a very buttoned up type person when he came to grad school.
Was I really?
You had a very strong sense of propriety, and you stuck with it.
I think that
which I admired.
I think that I didn't have any idea what I was doing there.
Also true.
You and me both.
Okay, so maybe I will just remind people what I'm doing, although actually it has changed substantially. So when we last spoke, I was just starting a new job where I was designing an online biochemistry course. And I was still working in a cheese microbiome lab, not doing immunology, which was sad. But since then, I finished that online course, got a paper published in that lab, and now I'm working on the human microbiome and immunology at the Broad Institute here, still in Boston. So I'm actually back to researching immunology, which is kind of cool, except that I don't have a bench. I do everything on the computer, which is much nicer than holding a pipette, I must say.
And as we said, doing microbiome research is much better, not having to deal with the actual samples. Especially human microbiome research.
Very true. Very true. I have been in so many conversations in the past few months where the phrase fresh frozen stool is used over and over and over again, and with no sense that it's weird.
Yep.
This is
it's quite entertaining. Thankfully, I don't have to deal with fresh frozen stool. It's just a column in the metadata file that I have to deal with. So, yeah, that is substantially better. And it's a ton of fun. So
that's the most important.
I don't actually have any real conclusions yet, but, those will come eventually.
I was just about to say, do you think you'll get them, or do you think you'll just generate a ton of data and then publish that you generated a ton of data and then put that data somewhere on the internet?
Yeah, I mean, both of those things are totally plausible.
Would it be a shit ton of data, or just...
The good news is you can probably... I think it's going to be very unlikely that I will not find something interesting. It might not be here's a bacterium that causes arthritis, I mean, it probably won't be that. But, when you have huge amounts of microbiome sequencing data, I think our cohort has a couple hundred people in it, and we've got metagenomes and metabolomes and all kinds of stuff, and a bunch of different disease types. And so I think it would be kind of crazy if I didn't find anything.
Sure. No, I was taking a pot shot at data science, and literally as we're speaking, I'm learning R because it's becoming clear to me that that's a really important thing to know.
R is a programming language that is terrible, but everybody uses it.
Yep. For big data sets, because that's just what they do.
Do you know what that because is?
Because
it's a terrible language.
Because it seems to be, you know it better than I do, so you should explain.
Well, I don't know R better. I'm sure that you know R better than me because I do everything I possibly can to not ever use R. My impression is that it's because people started using R and then people wrote statistics packages for R.
That's exactly.
And then there is now no other language that has the same library of stuff. It's not because it's a good language.
Well, I think that the reason that it can be cumbersome, it seems to me, and again, I'm not an R expert by any means, but it seems to be that the reason that it's cumbersome is because so many different people are working on the functionality of it all at once, that there's really like no consistency in syntax and function calling. And so what ends up happening is you just have a whole bunch of different authors of different R packages, and all of those packages, they just don't match well. You know what I mean?
Yes.
But that being said, the functionality of it is massive because you have all of these people working on cool things in different areas. So
yes, that is true.
Anyway, yep, that's what I'm finding. And it is frustrating because you end up Googling everything because you forgot the syntax of whatever function it was.
To be fair, though, that's true for basically any programming language. I'm actually hoping to design a course where like one of the principal learning objectives is teaching students how to Google programming problems. Like, because it's maybe like 50% of my time is Googling to remind myself of the syntax for the stuff that I'm doing. So that is not unique to R.
All right.
Oh, that's a really good idea. Troubleshooting class.
Anyway, instead of getting off on that hobby horse any further, Camilla.
Yes.
Who are you? Why are you here?
Why am I here? Well, I guess I'm here because I like immunology, like you two, and Chadene as well. And so I met Matt and Kevin through the PhD program in immunology at Harvard. And I came to the immunology program because I guess I fell in love with the immune system during college. I had this amazing professor. So I went to McAllister College in Minnesota and I studied biology, and I got into immunology because of this one professor. And then I ventured to Karolinska for some time to study some more immunology, looking into mast cells and allergy.
Where's Karolinska?
So it's in Stockholm, Sweden. So that's where I'm from. And so if you pick up an accent at some point, then this is where it's from. And now I've been in Boston for about 6 years. Doing more research into cancer immunology. So I'm all about trying to understand how the immune system interacts with cancer and how cancer interacts with the immune system and how the interplay can be used to help treat cancer in different ways. And I'm really excited to be here and talk about immunology with you guys.
Awesome. We have a couple of previous episodes on cancer and the immune system, including a couple of things on checkpoint blockade. Mm-hmm. I don't know whether I want you to listen to those.
Probably not.
Matt, Probably not. I don't recall how coherent we were during those episodes.
Yeah. I mean, there were some episodes that we had been drinking pretty heavily. And also, I think, we do know a couple topics really well, but I think anybody that listens to the podcast and knows immunology inside and out also knows that you can only have so much mastery over the diverse field that is immunology. So right. I think anybody listening to any one of these episodes with like serious expertise is going to definitely pick up on stuff that we just get wrong. So hopefully we are forgiven as we go for most of those things. I think we're mostly right most of the time, and I'm pretty happy with that.
Yeah. And if you do notice mistakes, if you are one of our 10 listeners and you are an expert in immunology and you find a mistake, you should find our Facebook page, facebook.com/Audiommunity, and you should leave a comment and tell us how wrong we are. And we will probably correct ourselves because we don't like to be wrong.
My favorite, sorry, just to bring up a little vignette here. My favorite was somebody, I kept saying bacteria when I meant bacterium. Mm-hmm. And the lady was not happy. Somebody sent us an email and said I sounded like I didn't know shit from Shinoa. Something like that. Shinola? Shit from Shinola. That's what it was. No. Which is an old phrase that I actually had to Google. But I was impressed at the level of, well, I mean, she meant well, and I was wrong. So there is that. But anyway, yeah, send those emails because it actually has changed the way that I say bacterium. I'm very careful about that now because I took that to heart.
You learned your lesson.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you say datum when you have a single point?
This is just ridiculous.
Sure
Kevin,
don't.
are you an ascriber to datum? I can't.
No, absolutely not. And also, I refuse. We had a long conversation at one point about how I refuse to pronounce programmed cell death in the way that Matt thinks it should be pronounced. We don't have to repeat that.
Oh no.
That was the other angry email that I got. And he was really angry, and I had written this whole minisode defending my position, and I had references for it, and then at some point I decided that I couldn't win the internet and did not record that minisode.
Yeah, that was probably wise.
Yeah.
You do get obsessive about things.
Sometimes.
But unlike some other people, you tend to not necessarily take those obsessions out into the real world, which I find laudable.
Well, it's a low bar, I think.
Yeah, that's fair.
I'm not outwardly crazy, just maybe a little inwardly.
Aren't we all?
Right.
I would agree.
So, Chadene, who are you and why are you here?
I've been asking myself that for a year. So let's see. Kevin and I met. We met on the grad school interview circuit, right? So that goes back quite some time now. Hard to believe just how many years. So was that 8-9 years now?
Something like 2008 is when.
Okay,
well,
so 2008.
I guess 2008 is when we started. So yeah, it was January of 2008. And I should say we met on the Columbia interview.
Yes, that's right. It was Columbia.
And then neither of us went to Columbia. No. We both came to Boston.
We did, but different programs. So I'll go ahead and put this out into the universe right away. I am not an immunologist at all, not even a little bit of an immunologist. So I think my role here is going to be to sort of play the fool, and ask all those silly questions.
When you guys get going, keep us grounded.
It's the opposite of true. That's exactly wrong.
Chadene is going to play the humble person while the rest of us take positions we can't possibly defend.
Right.
And you'll ask us, but does it really matter?
I mean, I might. That's kind of my go-to, like in a journal club, when I have clearly not read the paper, that's definitely a backup question for me. For sure.
But how many T helper cell subsets do you really need?
Yeah, what are you guys up to now? Like TH55? What is the deal with all of that?
Well, so the numbering isn't quite sequential.
No, sure.
It turned into a mess.
It's a big hot mess. Yeah.
I have to say, though, now having sort of transitioned into microbiology for the past couple of years, I do sometimes long for the sort of systematic, orderly thing. Like if it's a chemokine receptor, it's going to have one of a couple names. If it's on the cell surface, it's going to have a CD. Like that's kind of nice when all of the crap that I've been dealing with recently is random bug Latin names that I've never heard of, gene names that are just 3 letters and somehow people know what they are.
Oh, yeah.
Despite the fact that it's like ZHQ7. You're like, that doesn't mean anything.
But isn't that what people say about immunology, though? I always hear, oh my God, I could never learn it. It's CD this, IL this. Who knows? But it's like, but IL-4 is clearly different from IL-10. What are you talking about?
I think at the beginning, I don't know. And, I guess it's been a long time since I approached it the first time. But I think in the beginning, when you're first learning immunology, because of the CD system, you just get a whole bunch of numbers thrown at you. And so it's totally overwhelming because none of it means anything. And so in that case, like gene names can actually be really useful.
Yeah.
But when you hit like CD95 or 155, right, and you're trying to keep 155 gene names in your head, it just doesn't work anymore. And then the systematic part of it starts to show itself as an actual idea that might be worth something.
Well, and I think that the key for me is not necessarily that that remembering IL-4 versus IL-10 is somehow easier. It's just that if it has IL, it doesn't matter if I've ever heard of it or not. I know that it is a secreted immune protein. Right. I mean, like, that's something.
Right.
There's some information that's contained there. That's useful.
I've met you before. I know you.
Very nice.
Okay, so Chadene, you were telling us you're not an immunologist, which is sort of bullshit.
No, I'm definitely not. So probably the purest description of what I am is a molecular virologist. So
Awesome.
I ended up on the other end of Boston from you guys. I was at Boston University School of Medicine in the South End, and that's where I did my PhD in the Department of Microbiology there. And really that department breaks down into, there's a large contingent of immunologists in that department. So certainly my first 2 years, I was beaten over the head with immunology. I can't say a whole hell of a lot of it got in there. Some of it, it's kicking around. And then a lot of virologists. And then there are a couple of bacteriologists as well. But it was quite the department to be in if you were a single-strand negative sense RNA virologist. And so I studied respiratory syncytial virus in that department, and really the nitty-gritty of how the viral polymerase accomplishes replication and transcription of its viral genes. And that is not actually what I had intended to go to school for. The reason I went to BU was because they were building the level 4 lab, right? So I was a child of the hot zone. That was my manifesto growing up. And that was kind of my whole plan. I wanted to work with Ebola. I wanted to do that crazy stuff. And then, I did my rotations. I rotated in a lab that would have eventually ended up in the needle, although it took them a long time to get the needle open. Certainly didn't happen in my time in grad school. But I rotated in the lab that I ended up in, and I had absolutely no idea what was going on. For the first, 8 weeks of this rotation, I felt like an idiot. I had no clue what was going on. I was totally lost. And then I had that light bulb moment where it just connected. It just clicked. And I said, oh my God, this is so interesting. I love this. And so I ended up going in a totally different direction. But I did. I loved that. And then at the end of graduate school, my husband he's a doctor. He was doing all of his training in Boston as well. And so I had to stay in Boston for my postdoc, which is not a bad problem to have. And decided...
Yeah, I definitely think that if you're going to be a geographically limited...
Yeah, Boston's a good place to be.
I have a similar problem right now, but if you're going to be geographically limited as a scientist, there are very few places in the country that it would be better to be limited to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's so true. It's so true. And so, there were a lot of great options, and I decided, I wanted to try something totally different. So I shifted gears and ended up in a lab over at the Farber, and in that lab, at the Dana-Farber, sorry for everybody out there listening, the Dana-Farber, and in that lab, I was working on a putative tumor suppressor protein in ovarian cancer. So it was actually a project that my boss had picked up from a Harvard professor who had just retired and closed his lab down, and he didn't want to see this line of research die. And so I was sort of brought in because
Who was it?
Tom Benjamin.
Okay.
Are you familiar with him?
The name, but I'd never met him.
He's a superstar. He's a rock star. So the backstory here, I say I switched gears and I wasn't in virology anymore, but actually Tom Benjamin is a famous virologist. The guy has a Wikipedia page, right? And he's famous for just right that. I mean, that's the measure of fame, right?
Yep, that is a measure.
I think so. Yep. But he had discovered the polyomavirus large T antigen. This was like a very big deal back in the early days of molecular virology. And so when I was interviewing in my postdoc lab, not associated with Tom Benjamin, I had no idea he was connected with the lab. And I wasn't sure of what projects we'd be talking about, but I went in for an interview because I was interested in what they did. I got an email the night before and he says, oh, I hope you're okay with this. We have a visiting professor in the lab and he'd like to sit in on your interview tomorrow. His name is Tom Benjamin. And of course, like my heart dropped through the floor. I was like, oh my God. The stakes are so much higher now. But he is just a lovely human being. And so I got to work with him, sort of a joint project type of thing, which was just fabulous. It was just wonderful to be mentored by him. And then also the other project that my lab was working on, my boss got a Pioneer Award for, was an epigenetic reprogramming platform that could be deployed in various modalities of disease. And so I was sort of on the delivery side of things. I was trying to, come up with interesting viral delivery vectors for delivering this platform. In the end, we ended up going with nanoparticles. We didn't go with viruses at all, because there's a lot of things that complicate that. So yeah, I sort of had my hands in a lot of different pies as a postdoc, which was fun and interesting. And I got to, learn a lot of new things and get up to speed quickly on different areas of science. And then last June, my husband finished his training. He got that job back in Connecticut, which is where we're originally from. He had applied all over, but that just turned out to be sort of the best option. So he's a nephrologist, a kidney doctor, and that's pretty saturated in Boston. So it was clear we were probably going to have to leave. And so I just sort of decided to take a full stop on my career and figure out, what I really want to be doing. We also have two kids, two little monsters. My oldest just turned 5 and my youngest is 2. And so I decided to take that time out and spend a year at home because I just, I had never really stopped. I had my first kid in grad school right before I defended. I had my second in my postdoc, and it was just all chaos all the time.
Yeah, I can't begin to imagine doing
it was crazy.
that during your defense. Yeah.
It was crazy.
My mom had 3 babies during her PhD, and I said,
crazy.
Mom, I don't understand. I can barely take care of myself. Much less 3 extra people.
You figure it out really fast, but oh boy, was it a wild ride for a while.
Yeah,
I was fortunate. I had people, I was working for people, my grad student mentor, she was fabulous. She had a son and everybody in the lab had kids, and it was a lab where work-life balance was very, very important. And she was very, very good. I was so lucky. But I think circumstance, is huge in that situation. If you're not in the right situation, the right circumstance, you don't have understanding people that are, you call in and you're, oh, my kid's sick, I have to cancel my experiments today. It's a big deal. It's a hard balance to strike. So I've been sort of cooling my heels in the middle of Connecticut. And I have realized just how sparse science is outside of the city. It is sort of hard to find a science community. We're a little far from New Haven where we are. It's about an hour. So not much closer to us than Boston, really. So, yeah.
So you're called to Audiommunity.
Yes.
Yeah. I thought about inviting Chadene onto the podcast because I thought, who of all the people I know, who is going to be able to sort of counterbalance the lack of preparation that the rest of us do?
That's a lot of weight to put on her shoulders, Kevin. Just so you know, you're the only one that will have read the paper.
Yeah.
I think after hearing her introduction, we're all completely convinced that she's got this. So I feel very calm now. I feel very calm now. We're in good hands.
Thank you. Yeah. I'm also hyper type A. So I definitely took some of my type A that was going on in the lab and I applied at home as well. My kids know I run a tight ship. So I got it down. I'm pretty good.
Nice. So I'm real nervous to hear that your husband is a nephrologist because I mentioned that I had switched labs. And so I have historically only done really basic mouse work. Mm-hmm. In Bali's lab, it was the most basic carrier hapten, sort of 1970s and 80s experiments, which I really liked and they were pretty cool. But when he left, I had to completely switch gears. And so now I'm working in an SLE lab, lupus. Basically.
Oh, sure. Yep.
And so
can you pronounce the E part of SLE?
Nope.
Okay.
Erythematosus, I believe.
Is it only that many syllables? I feel like there are more syllables in that word.
Yeah, I should actually be able to pronounce that. I always just say lupus or SLE. But basically the whole project is looking at kidney biopsies and trying to figure out why there are plasma cells engrafting in SLE. So I'm going to probably at some point be talking kidneys. And so please don't allow your husband to listen to that episode. Because I don't have any idea what I'm talking about.
I don't think he's particularly interested in listening in general, so don't worry.
Perfect.
He's not an academic physician. He is now in private practice and also staffs a hospital. So he's not really all that interested in the most basic of research. He reads the New England Journal, right? So if you publish there, he'll probably read what you're doing.
I don't think there's any risk of him coming across my work in the New England Journal.
Well, that just killed the conversation. Well done, Matt.
We're all
Kevin, I'm not all that good at science.
We're all
I'm
wistfully
okay
dreaming.
at science.
As we all ponder our sad careers.
We're all thinking, what would it take to publish in New England Journal of Medicine? What would I need to do?
I think I would have to give myself lupus and then cure it. I think that's what it would have to be.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Dedication.
I just have to plant a flag here and say that I'm trying to figure out how to do this in my audio program so that I can make sure that this is a silence that I leave in. Normally, I do my best to remove all of the pauses because most of the time they're not interesting. But oh yeah, M, right. Sorry. The other nice thing about being the one that edits the podcast, the one reason that I'm a little bit reluctant to potentially give it up to a paid professional, is that I have all the control over what I leave in and what I take out. So I can leave in all the stupid shit that everybody else says and take out when I sound like a doofus.
I think I will learn how to edit audio. I think it's.
I think you have the right idea, Camilla. Teach me.
Take control.
What you don't realize is that this is part of my sneaky plan to try to get you to.
Of course.
So many layers.
You're a manipulator.
Yeah.
So speaking of paying to get someone to edit, one of the things that we are considering doing is, in addition to getting more people to host the podcast so that we are more regular, one of the things that we would like to do potentially is to hire people to edit the podcast, which you can do for not that much. But since we're all postdocs and poor, it's a lot of money for us. So one of the things that we're thinking about doing is trying to solicit donations from, again, those 10 of you that are still listening to the podcast. And so I've set up a Patreon page. If you're not familiar with Patreon, it's a service that you can go on, you sign up and you say, I think Audiommunity is worth, I don't know, 50 cents, $1 an episode. And the good news is, given our track record, you don't actually pay anything unless the podcast is released. So you set up a per episode donation, and then that's further incentive for us to actually release the podcast. So if you think that you might like to donate, you can go to patreon.com/Audiommunity and set up a donation. At some point, we should have perks. A lot of other podcasts do this.
Yeah.
I don't know what sort of perks we can offer. We'll say your name on the podcast, but that's lame.
That is really lame. That's not worth it.
You can tell Matt why he's pronouncing something wrong, and then for an entire episode, he will pronounce it the way that you want him to.
Wow.
That's good.
I think we could get a lot of donations that way.
I would do that.
For example.
Yes. You don't know. That's the conversation that Matt. How do you say it?
This was triggering, I think. I'm sorry.
No, I don't get triggered. I've decided I will not use the word triggered to describe any feeling that I'm ever having. I think I'm maybe triggered by the word triggered. But yeah, apoptosis is how I now pronounce it in mixed company when I don't know the feelings of everybody else, because I just like to drive it home. But usually if I know how or where everybody stands, it'll be apoptosis.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah. So
I'm proud of you. That's growth, Matt.
Yeah. In polite conversation, it's apoptosis. But if I don't know anybody in the room, then it's apoptosis. And then I'll bring out the references to describe how the author originally felt about the word when he invented it.
Mm-hmm. Because you think that means something?
I do. Yeah.
Interesting.
Can I just say here that I'm really enjoying having a conversation with science people again. I forgot that these are the kinds of conversations we have.
Yep, these are the conversations that we have.
This is really funny.
These things and about poop, with microbiome stuff, and then some blood and these type of things.
Having children, I see a lot of that. So,
Yes, thankfully I don't, but I do tend to bring up fecal transplants at just about any dinner conversation that I can.
Nice. I've noticed that, and I've been meaning to say something to you.
No, you haven't.
No, you're enjoying it, Matt.
No, you haven't. Because you're just as fascinated. Did you know that there is a lab that did an experiment where they were doing fecal transplants to cure C. diff. Pretty sure this was in a mouse model. I don't remember exactly the details, but they filtered the stool to remove all of the bacteria, and it still worked.
What?
No.
Right?
That's interesting. That's cool.
How? Where's
Yeah.
that paper? Where's that paper? Send me that paper.
I'll send you that link. We could maybe do it on an episode, although it's not really an immunology thing.
That's okay. We'll take it.
For those of you that aren't cool enough to know about fecal transplants, it turns out that they cure C. diff infection. C. difficile is a really horrible intestinal infection that you often get when you take too much antibiotics, and it sort of blooms. And because the Clostridium is more resistant to antibiotics than other things, you keep taking more antibiotics, and it just like gets worse and worse because the C. diff tends to survive. But it turns out if you get a poop enema from somebody that's healthy, you can also do a gavage if you prefer. That's when you stick a tube down the throat and go straight into the stomach. So
that's worse.
Poop in either hole works.
Either direction. Excellent.
But either gastrointestinal hole, I should say, probably.
Yeah,
probably
stick
other
with-
orifices.
I
It
would
wouldn't
stick
work
with
that
those
well.
listeners.
two.
Don't do this at home.
Yeah, it's important. It's important that we're accurate here. So this treatment cures C. diff, and it has like a 98% success rate or something crazy like that. And these are infections that would otherwise just last until you die. There's like no other way to get rid of it. But yeah, everybody thought that it was because you get good bacteria and it sort of outcompetes the C. diff. But according to this paper, you can remove all the bacteria and it still works. So what the hell's going on there?
I'm feeling incredulous. Send me that paper.
Yeah.
Okay.
Was it just
do it.
the bacteria, or so? What did they transfer, and how
So
can we
they
selectively
took
remove
the
it?
stool. They blended it up like you do, and
Like one does.
they passed it through a I forget, it's like 0.45 micron filter or something. Like,
Oh, that's pretty big.
It's just a it's just a size filter, but it removes bacteria cells, right? So like the virologist says it's pretty big. Because viruses go through. So people are speculating like maybe it's phage, maybe it's metabolites, maybe they're like really tiny bacterial
did they
spores
do-
that can then germinate.
I'm sorry, did they do one experiment in this paper? Was it a one experiment paper? Did they not like heat and activate it and do stuff?
Matt, I don't remember.
Send me the link, Kevin. I'm getting impatient.
We need data.
Yes. It would be super cool if it was phage, though.
Yes. it
Phage
would
is
be
one of my
pretty cool.
favorite topics.
Yeah, can you like, what do we, I remember when I was interviewing for grad school, I was at Rockefeller talking to David Massapust, and he was talking about
Way to name drop Camilla. Nice work.
and we were talking about oh no, this is terrible. It's not David Massapust at all. It was Daniel Masita. And because David Massapust,
Double name drop.
yeah, this is terrible. No, David
But now you've
Massapust
pulled
is an
David Massapust
amazing
out.
immunologist at University of Minnesota, who I also interviewed with. But Daniel Masita is at Rockefeller. And we were talking about the microbiome, and then we were also talking about bacteriophages. And it just seems like we have this whole knowledge now about bacteria in the gut, and this is not my area of expertise at all, but what about the viruses that infect the bacteria and how those perturb the biology of those bacteria that are in our guts and how that influences? That just seems like a whole thing that needs to be explored more, and I'm sure
Kevin-
it is already.
No,
No?
I think it's starting. I mean, Kevin, you can correct me, but I think when we were going up to Boston to teach that course, I think we talked about it a little bit. But I mean, the number of viral genome papers in the microbiome, at least to my knowledge, at the time that I looked it up, was pretty small.
Yeah, there's getting more and more. I mean,
Oh, I'm sure that it's
There-
rapidly advancing.
Unfortunately, I have to be a little bit circumspect when I talk about stuff that's happening in my lab, because even though I am a radical open science type person, all of the work that's done in the lab is like hugely collaborative, and we work with tons of people.
Sure.
And not everybody is quite as willing to just publish everything right away. So forgive me for being a little bit circumspect. But I can say that I have looked at now how those viromics papers are being done, and it does not fill me with confidence.
Oh, no.
Which part of it? The work that was done, or the conclusions they were reaching?
No, there are people doing great work. It's that the number of I don't know how representative this is of other stuff, but like we are collecting some data, and like the number of sequencing reads that actually map to a virus, if you do like a shotgun metagenomic sequencing thing, it's just like it's low. It's real low.
Got it.
And so, drawing conclusions about what viruses are there based on like, out of a few million or tens of millions of reads, sequencing reads, you're talking about like less than 10 reads being recruited to a certain viral genome, and you're saying it's there at some abundance. And it's like, I don't know about that. But I just sent you the paper, the title of which is Efficacy of Sterile Fecal Filtrate Transfer for Treating Patients with Clostridium difficile Infection. And the results are that it actually wasn't humans. I was wrong. In all 5 patients, FFT, again, that's filtered fecal transplant, restored normal stool habits and eliminated symptoms of CDI for a minimum period of 6 months.
Oh, wow.
Yep. Okay. I will read the paper. This is feeling like a ranty paper for me, but let me take a look at it. And we should do that paper. Actually, we should do something similar to it.
Let's do it. Maybe there's some follow-ups or something closely related that we can check out.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Cool. If you're listening now and you have ideas for papers that you would like us to discuss or topics, there's now a link on our website. If you go to emmunity.org, EMMUNITY.org, and I'm just going to go there right now so I remember exactly what the page is. If you go to the contact page, there's now a link to a form that you can fill out where you can like attach the paper, or you can just give us the title or the abstract, or just, write in the notes like, hey, I think that you guys should talk more about cancer immunology because we want Camilla to make you look stupid. You can do that, and we will probably listen to you because we care about keeping the audience that we have and getting new audience. So,
and one idea that I wanted to float to you guys, but also to the listeners as well, is one of the things that has also changed since last we spoke is that I've been moving more and more into policy. And so for a couple different reasons, I'm meeting with people down in Georgia and starting to talk about vaccination policy and legislation and things like that. And I find that there are some perspectives that an immunologist can give on some broader social issues. And so if there's anything of interest out there, and if you guys are interested in doing something like that, regardless, I will probably be recording some stuff on the major questions that are currently sort of under investigation in vaccination, and also sort of how public policy shapes the way herd immunity works and things like that. So if anybody has ideas more along those lines, I'd be happy to look into that as well.
I think that's a great idea.
It's also totally okay for you to plug stuff, Matt. So like Matt was interviewed on the Scholar Strategy Network podcast, which was really awesome. He was talking about like why vaccines are important and why people who don't get vaccines are stupid.
No,
should
I did
be killed.
not say that.
Wow.
In order to know which one of us is correct, you have to go listen to the podcast, which is really great.
I highly
That's
support
another thing
this,
that's
Matt.
changed is my podcast listening habits have changed dramatically since the last time we recorded. It's kind of crazy. I only listen to like 25 hours of podcast audio a week now.
Yeah, boy, you're really cutting back.
Like a desert out there. Yeah, it's bad.
Do you feel some withdrawal?
Sometimes.
What are your
symptoms? I tend to fill it with audiobooks. But there's only so much listening you can do. I don't have the one downside of not doing experiments anymore, or not doing bench experiments anymore, is that I don't have hours and hours of mindless pipetting, which is when I listen to most of my podcasts. It's really hard to listen to podcasts and code. You just can't do it.
Yeah, tissue culture is pretty
podcasts
amazing, actually.
Yeah.
This is when I usually sing to myself in the tissue culture room when nobody else is there. And then someone comes in and I'm kind of mid-chorus. And it gets really awkward because I really desperately want to finish that chorus. But it's just, someone just came in. So you just have to swallow the last bit.
That is the worst feeling. That's terrible.
And
I think you just got to roll with it.
She should just own it and sing it out.
You just got to roll with it. Yeah.
Speaking of which, is it true both Camilla and Chadene, you are like musical performing type people?
That's right.
Both of you had microphones. I like sent a message. It was like, hey guys, you need to purchase microphones, and both of you were like, I got this.
That's right.
So what's the deal with that?
Well, I don't know. I've always sung. I've always been in choirs and a cappella and these things. It kind of, I don't know, trailed off a little bit during grad school due to being occupied with other things. So that's why I got the microphone to record a little bit at home, and just mostly for my own personal use. But I love performing and I love singing in front of people. So
can I just say that when Shiv made you sing at the recruitment event, it was the most awkward thing, I think. Like, it was so clear that it was just like, oh, I heard that you sing. Why don't you sing something?
Yeah. But
is that how that conversation went?
So what happened was we had lunch. We had that lunch during recruitment weekend, and Shiv asked us, so he said, well, does anybody do anything else but science? And I just thought this was small talk. So I said, sure, I do music. I love to sing. And he said, great. How about Saturday at the big recruitment event? And I said, And so I discussed with this other guy and we decided, okay, let's do it. And I did it. And I remember the whole house was foggy because they had made this really spicy food. So Fred Altslab had cooked. And so everything was foggy. So I was coughing and I had a beer. I was nervous. I decided, okay, I'm going to do this song in Swedish so nobody knows if I mess it up.
Nice. Good call.
And I just did it. I said, okay, if they don't want me, whatever, I'm just going to do this thing. And I think your old boss, Matt, keeps telling me, he's like, you sang during recruitment weekend. I said, is this why you took me? He's like, maybe.
Yeah. No, they really, it sort of has become a talent show.
Sanket really screwed everybody.
Yeah, but I think that he was forced into it too. I think that, what was it? It must have been, somebody found out that he was a tabla player.
It was Shiv. It was Shiv again.
No, I don't think it was. It might have been, but I don't think it was. I thought that it was.
Shiv found someone in Boston who had a tabla that he could borrow.
Yes.
In order to get him to play. So this is a guy who interviewed along with Matt and I. He was actually my roommate at recruitment weekend, whose name is Sanket, and he plays this instrument called a tabla. That's a drum. It's like a traditional, I think, Indian drum. And the way that Shiv described it, I will never forget this. He said, like, so imagine someone told you that they had studied guitar with Eric Clapton. This is the person. This is like that for, tabla. Sanket studied under this, guru of tabla playing. And
wow.
Yeah, he's really good.
And it was really good.
Really, really good.
I remember I invited him to go rock climbing a couple times. He was like, no, I can't because
my totally
different calluses.
Yeah.
Right.
Chadene, what's your deal?
My story is so similar to yours. It's really funny, actually, because I, too, was coerced into performing at, it wasn't recruitment weekend. It was our department's retreat weekend.
Oh, jeez.
Yes, and I play guitar and sing, sort of a folk kind of a thing, folk rock. It was super awkward my first year. It was so awkward. I did it, and that was fun. But so my story is similar. I always sang growing up. I started playing guitar at a really young age and took lessons right up until I left for college, actually. But prior to college, between the summer between my sophomore and junior years of high school, I sort of flirted with a recording contract and like an actual professional career. So I performed a lot. I was in all the coffee houses, all the restaurants, all the bars, in Connecticut, and sort of had a manager and kind of looked into that. And then, my father was sort of the voice of reason. Here I am, like starry-eyed 16-year-old thinking like, yeah, I'm going to go be a pop star. My dad was like, I thought you always said you wanted to go to medical school. I was like, well, I can do that after. And he's like, Or you could go to medical school first, and then if you still want to be a musician, you could do that afterwards, and that was very sage advice, very good advice. And so
I like that you then took the lucrative step of becoming a scientist.
I know.
Yeah.
I really got that one all twisted around, right?
I feel like we need to make a podcast song then. We need to make a song about immunology.
We should.
About each of the papers.
I just
like
saw,
a little blurb.
did you guys see Evo Devo? This video, it's that darn song, Despacito, right? Justin Bieber. And this guy made this incredible science video called Evo Devo, this like play on Despacito. Look it up. It is the most amazing YouTube video I have ever seen and hugely educational about evolutionary development.
That's
all right,
fantastic.
I will put a link to that in the show notes.
Super catchy.
So you don't even have to look it up. What you don't know is that Matt and I have written songs, mostly at my instigation.
Yeah.
So I don't think Matt should take any of the blame for this. But there are two that I am most proud of. So the first one is to the tune of Danny Boy, and it is "Oh Neutrophil."
Nice.
The damps are calling. I won't
good Lord.
attempt to sing it right now.
Yeah.
And it goes on from there. And then the other one, which is arguably even greater, is Johnny Cash, Folsom Prison Blues, but it is instead the T-cell energy blues.
Oh my
my
God,
goodness.
I forgot about that.
That sounds amazing.
I hear that DC coming. It's rolling through the lymph. But I ain't seen a co-stim since I don't know when.
I think we have something to work with here.
Please do. Please go on. I love this.
As I said, I get to control what I cut and what I leave in. So I don't know if there's anything else that we want to talk about on our inaugural 2017 in November, first episode of 2017. Does anybody else want to add anything?
I would just say, we threw out the Patreon thing and we threw out the reboot and we've got some new voices. And I would just say that I think we're going to try to organize this a little bit differently in the way that shows are recorded and put out. So, look for a pretty steady stream of episodes, sort of like a season almost, like block, So hopefully the people that are listening, thank you, first of all, for continuing to listen. But, if you think other people would be interested in the podcast, we should have a lot of content coming over the next few months. So I'm excited. I know you guys are excited. And so hopefully we can get this thing revved up again and do some damage.
And if you're only listening because of Kate, she will be back.
Yes.
We didn't boot her off the podcast.
No.
So
she's defending. She's got some things to do.
yeah. Maybe we should record her defense.
Ooh.
Post it as an Audiommunity episode.
I like that idea.
Sending live.
Yeah, so this has been Audiommunity. Thanks a lot, Chadene and Camilla, for coming on board. I'm really excited to have you guys.
Thank you for
Nice
Nice
inviting
to have
us.
some additional voices. And as Matt said, go to patreon.com/Audiommunity if you want to kick 10 cents or 50 cents or $1 our way every episode. It'll really motivate us to post episodes because that's, going to be super lucrative. I might even be able to afford a cup of coffee from these donations. So that would be awesome. We're also on Facebook, facebook.com/Audiommunity. I'm all over the interwebs. You can find me on Twitter, Kev Bonham. I think, Chadene, you have a social media presence as well, right?
I do. Well, I don't. Can you call it a presence, Kevin? I've tweeted like twice.
Okay.
But I have one. I'm there.
Okay. You also have a blog. We'll post a link.
I do.
You haven't posted in a while, and it makes me sad.
I know. I'm working up to it. I have a couple of new ideas. And actually, I think that this podcast is going to be a source of inspiration for me.
Sweet. Matt is not on the internet because he's a hermit.
Afraid of the internet. Yeah. I'm fearful of large digital spaces.
Camilla, is there anywhere people can find you on the internet?
Sure. I'm also on Twitter. I'm more active politically on Twitter, I think, than science-wise, but definitely it can change. But I'm not I don't have my blog. I don't have a blog or anything like that, but maybe
that's okay.
If
you want, you can post on our lovely website, emmunity.org, emmunity.org. And as I said, you can contact us there. You can recommend papers for us to discuss. You should go to our Facebook page and like us because it's the only way that we get validation. If you don't give us money, that is. And the music at the beginning and the end of the show is performed by Rachel Reineck. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.